This September, I plan to ride the 444-mile Natchez Trace Parkway from Natchez, Mississippi up to Nashville, Tennessee over 7 days, biking and camping along the way. For me, this started with an 8.5-hour drive to Nashville, where I would pick up a shuttle from downtown Karla Brown, who would drive me to the beginning in Natchez. There I would stay at the Natchez Grand Hotel with my view of the Mississippi out the window. Karla Brown provided excellent shuttle service and interesting stories of her 2-year walk across America, over 9,000 miles. She's got some good stories to tell, and she'll share those during the shuttle ride. For the first day, I plan to ride 54 miles to the Rocky Springs Campground. The Natchez Trace Parkway has a few different campgrounds along the way, some open to bikers and campers, and some open to just bikers. I slept well that night. Natchez is an old city set high above the Mississippi. Its history is preserved in the town. It was going to be nice weather, a high of 88 and sunny. I started out the day with a breakfast at the Natchez Coffee Company, and then I toured through town a little bit. One interesting thing in Natchez is that they have a Catholic basilica. I thought it was a good place to start my trip. It was nice to look around. It was impressive. A single road, called State Street, shoots one out of downtown Natchez to the beginning of the parkway. The entire week looked as though it was going to be good weather, starting fairly warm and cooling down a bit. No rain in the forecast. And this is the southern terminus of the Natchez. This on-ramp led to the beginning of that 7-day trip. The Natchez Trace was originally a game trail and then became a trail used by Native Americans, and finally the United States started to blaze the trail. In 1801, in fact. And then in the 1930s, the federal government made the decision to make the parkway that would run near the trail. Construction began in about 1937. It wasn't fully completed until 2005. One of the nice things about the trail is that the speed limit is kept fairly low, around 50. There's no stop signs or red lights along the parkway, and no commercial vehicles are allowed on the parkway. And I found that to be the case except for a couple examples. The negative aspect of the trail is that there is no shoulder, but the cars are so infrequent I felt safe along the way, at least except for around perhaps Tupelo. There are places where one can view the old trace. This spot was marked as one where one could. I wasn't able to find the old trace, but found an interesting little cemetery. Many of the views along the trace itself are fairly similar. There's thousands of shades of green and thousands of textures of leaves and plants and different animals to see. But for some of the better views, one needs to stop along the different areas set up to view nature, to view old Indian mounds, historical it's along the trail. Getting to and from cities that are near the parkway can be a little bit interesting. Some are easier to get to than others. mainly because of distance and also because sometimes the roads to get to those cities can be a little bit heavily traveled and, again, no shoulders. Therefore, I found it important to fill up water whenever it was available along restrooms that were on the parkway. Hey, buddy. They were spaced a decent amount apart, though, so I needed to be careful to pick up water at each one. And I did find that some didn't have water available, so I needed to go into town. This is one spot in Port Gibson where I made my way into town to refresh some supplies and to pick up some items for dinner that night. Here in Port Gibson, there's also a road that one can take off an exit ramp of the parkway to get into town. But I received a heads up that there's this maintenance facility on the trail that if one cuts into can provide easier access to a side road that's less traveled, a little bit safer. Here is one of the stops where one can see the sunken trace. Essentially, the trail was traveled so much that it dug into the ground. Imagine how dangerous that could be with perhaps criminals, outlaws hanging up high, looking down at the travelers that go by. The parkway has gentle curves and gentle hills, especially at the beginning. There's some more steep sections as one gets closer to Nashville. This is an ancient Indian mound. There are a few of those along the way. The Rocky Springs Campground would be my first overnight during the trip. The campsites along the parkway don't have showers, but they have restrooms and access to water, although Rocky Springs did not have running water, or at least drinkable water, that evening. At Rocky Springs, you can walk back along the trail to an abandoned town of Rocky Springs. This is a church that remains there with an interesting story about a pastor who was delayed and being selected to run the church because he laughed too much. There were some very nice views outside of the old cemetery and trees, and one can also walk along the abandoned city. There isn't much left there, though. Here's an old safe. Another in a water cistern. I had a good night's sleep. For the second day, I planned to ride about 70 miles. This night I would not stay on the parkway, but there was a little campground called the Ratliff Ferry trading post near the parkway I planned to stay at. It also had a bar and restaurant which I planned to take advantage of. It was another nice day. It was a little bit warmer, a high of 93. During the first few days, I was surprised by how few bikers I saw along the parkway. Although when I got near the end, I did see more. There are two cities along the way. They can get fairly busy in the evenings, while during rush hours, Tupelo and Jackson, and one's advised to stay off of the parkway during those times. That was my plan in Jackson, and part of doing so involved using a multi-use trail that is very nice and runs near the parkway for many miles. The interesting thing, though, is that the multi-use trail just kind of ends, and one needs to walk over from the parkway to get on it. It was a nice trail. It had several water fountains along its path. I also took advantage of being near cities and shopping areas to stop at a Panera's for lunch. although I regretted not filling up with more water on my way out of town. North of Jackson, one comes to the reservoir. I enjoy biking near water for some reason. I think the difference in the views seems refreshing. It's nice to have water nearby. Noticed an increase of motorcycles at this point as well. There were many along my trip, taking advantage of the parkway, many of them camping along it as well. I was glad to arrive at my campsite for the end of the day. I had run out of water, and the campsite was nice in terms of having a store where I was able to refreshen that and some snacks. And again, it had a restaurant and a bar. Nothing about this campsite was amazing, but it provided several different things I needed, and I appreciated it for that. A decent area to camp, decent area to get food. Although late at night they had some Jeeps come in that were partying a bit. They weren't there long, didn't disturb me too much. During the third day, I planned to ride about 70 miles to the Busby campsite. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. It'd be at about mile marker 193. I woke up, packed up, had a Cliff Bar for breakfast, and headed out. Although the forecast called for a sunny day, and it was that way to start, as I rode I could feel the wind picking up. I'd see leaves falling down and the sky started to darken. Checking my weather map, I saw a storm was ahead, so I pulled over and waited, and it was a quick storm. It passed. It cooled things down a bit too, which was nice. I had heard from some who rode through it and described how heavy the rain did come down. It merely left me with some damp roads. The road conditions of the parkway were consistent. It was a good, well-maintained surface. Again, no shoulder, but there weren't enough cars to make that much of a concern. And all of the cars that did go by were very courteous. I did not run into any issues with cars traveling too close to me as they passed. On the way to camp, I stopped at the French camp. There's some stores and restaurants there. They were all closed this day, though, I think because it was a Sunday. I did find a vending machine with a Coke, and that cold can of Coke was probably the best cold can of Coke I've ever had. The clouds disappeared, became sunny. The campsite was nice, good place to set up. It had water available, which I took advantage of. Planned for the fourth day to be about a 72-mile ride into Tupelo, where I would stay at a hotel, give me the opportunity to wash some laundry. The difficult thing was that I knew Tupelo would be busy during the rush hour, but I also planned to get to Tupelo by the end of the day. This caused a little bit of a dilemma whether to try to get there before the rush hour or after. If I got there after, it would be getting dark at that point. So I planned to get there ahead of time, but there was some strong winds that day, some very strong gusts of wind in particular. headwinds and crosswinds. There were several interesting spots to stop and look around, take a break, refresh water. This is Tupelo here, and one can see that the traffic wasn't crazy, but it was definitely heavier than it had been earlier. I decided to cut off the parkway early. Now, this put me on some streets through Tupelo that were also busy, but at least the speed limit was closer to 35 instead of 50, so the cars were traveling slower and it felt a bit safer. I found some smaller side streets to use. Got to my hotel, got some dinner, washed my clothes, got ready for the next day. It was another good day of riding. I would head from Tupelo to the Colbert Ferry Campground. This is a bicycle-only campground. What would be interesting this day is that several miles of the parkway were closed, and so there was a detour to follow. The day started with a bit of a hill, a nice overlook. Cotton fields, something I don't see at home in Ohio. It was much cooler this day, and I appreciated that. Just before the detour, I crossed a waterway, stopped for a moment to double check my directions for the detour, take a look around. And then the detour began. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. In fact, I enjoyed some of the different variety of scenes, the old farmhouses, different landscapes, a couple small towns to go through, grab lunch, and as I mention often, grab some water. I will say there were many, many, many dogs along this detour, and few of them chained or fenced in. They all wanted to run up and say hello, some louder than others. One little friendly rascal followed me for a good bit of time. I did everything I could to get him to turn around. The problem was he was quicker than I was, but we eventually separated. If one doesn't take full advantage of the different scenic spots along the parkway, the view of the parkway itself can get a bit monotonous. And so it's nice to go along these little country roads, spice things up a bit. But some of the disadvantages are that the parkway is just safer, no commercial vehicles. Cotton fields in the sunset. The detour ended and I got back on the parkway, and there wouldn't be much to go until I'd get to my campground. Because this was a bicycle-only campground, I was the only person there that night. I enjoyed the solitude, got there a little bit late, so didn't get to look around much until the morning. On the sixth day, the plan was to ride about 60 miles to the Meriwether Lewis campsite, the place where Meriwether Lewis died and was buried.
Newborn day in that still warm glow. Life's in love.
It was cooler yet this day, but there were definitely still wind gusts of up to 30 miles an hour, which slowed things down.
Time stands still while the sun goes round. Distant
Across the Tennessee River,
sounds. Daylight waiting to come.
I had to spend much of the day in Alabama.
So let it shine, 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 shine on me. Let it
At mile marker 338, just a little bit east, there is this home with these amazing stone walls, which Tom Hendricks built over 30 years to commemorate his great-great-grandmother's journey, a Native American who was moved out of the area and then traveled back. The story is that he wanted to commemorate her and was looking for a way, and was told that all things shall pass, only the stones will remain. So he started building these stone walls.
roads ahead under scarlet sand.
And this video can't do justice for the amount of walls, how wide they were, how tall they were. I crossed into Tennessee this day.
Moment and breathe it in. Search for skies
Getting closer to home.
and close my eyes so I can't see the light.
That was the Mississippi Redneck, at least that's what he has painted on his truck. He ended up camping at the same campsite I was on my way to.
Let it shine.
There were some beautiful stops along the way this day, such as this one. It's easy on these trips to get too concerned with the number of miles per day, what needs to be done, the time of day, when things can get done, and you can get to the campsite. It takes a little bit of effort to slow down and remember you're there to enjoy yourself. And that was easy this day with all of the views. The Meriwether Lewis campsite is a large one.
Shine, shine on.
So there were plenty of stops, and I found a good one. Had a good night, made myself dinner that evening. Seventh day, of course, would be my last. It was planned to be about 58 miles. I was warned that there were some bigger hills this way, and there were. None of the hills along the whole trip reached above 8% grade, and that was only, I believe, 3, one of which was on the detour. Just took them slow and enjoyed the other end going down. There were still headwinds that slowed that a bit. On the 7th day, I saw several more bikers. Many of them apparently out for just a day ride, or perhaps had SAG support taking their baggage. But there were a few tourists, bike tours, a couple of which I got the opportunity to stop and talk with. And again, some amazing views if one takes the time to stop and look. This was overall a great trip. It was a great 7 days. There were a couple days added on for getting to and from the parkway, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'd highly recommend it. Parkway's well cared for, has campsites, has free water and restrooms spaced out along its path. This amazing bridge was only a couple miles away from my car at the end. And at mile marker, I believe 440 is the sign for the parkway, where everyone gets an iconic image of me, of at least my bike.